welcome to the Vietnam War Veterans Memorial. And this is actually a national holiday. President Obama made it an executive order. President Trump put it into law. So it's on the same level as Memorial Day, Independence Day, the 4th of July, and Veterans Day, November 11th. And I'm so pleased that we were able to come out here today, as compared to last year when it was very cold and windy, to honor the men that are on this monument here from West Islip. They started right here in this school. They grew up here. They had girlfriends in the neighborhood. They raced up and down Higbee Lane in cars. And age-wise, they were from 20 years old to 26 was the oldest fellow. And what I'd like to do now is call us to order. Everybody is here, and I'd like to introduce Dr. Anthony Bridgman, the principal, to welcome us. Dr. Bridgman.
Thank you, Mr. Boyd.
Spencer.
I'm always at Boyd's. Mr. Spencer, thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, everyone, and on behalf of West Islip High School and our school district, I want to welcome you to a monument as we remember the lives, the service of those who really go out there and put their lives in danger, who died for our nation. We're very proud at West Islip to continue to celebrate, to join hands together with our Chamber of Commerce and everyone, Mr. Murphy and his Vietnam class students. You're learning a great history of service, history of dedication, history of giving one's life for a nation. I want to welcome our superintendent of schools, our dignitaries, our Vietnam War vets. We want to thank you for everything that you've done for our country. And as West Islip, we will always remember. Every time we drive by this monument, we remember. So students, please continue to remember, and we look forward to a great dedication today. Thank you again for coming.
Thank you, Dr. Bridgman. And I invite Gary Miller to come forward and lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Gary. At this time, I'd ask the President of the Chamber of Commerce, Rich Carpenter, to introduce the dignitaries present here today.
Before I introduce the dignitaries, I would just like to thank everyone for coming out today. It means a lot to us. I would like to recognize honored Vietnam veterans, Frank DeAversa, U.S. Navy, Mike O'Leary, U.S. Army, Tom Mack, U.S. Army, Ron Panaccia, U.S. Navy, John Caroli, U.S. Air Force. I'd also like to recognize our Superintendent of Schools, Dr. Paul Romanelli, our principal here at the high school, Dr. Anthony Bridgman, Suffolk County Legislator Steve Flotteren, Islip Town Councilman John Cochrane, and also West Islip High School teacher Kevin Murphy. Thank you.
And I'd ask our superintendent if he'd like to say a few words.
Thanks so much. So just really honored to be here today and share a few brief words. It's just inspiring to see all of our students standing out here today, and think about the future of West Islip and the future of our country. We appreciate the fact that we have educational experiences learning about Vietnam across the district and learning about service, as Dr. Bridgman mentioned. And just really honored to be in the presence of some current military who are serving right now, some retired military, and also some military members from West Islip who gave their all as well. So honored to be here, and thank you for this wonderful event. I will definitely be thinking about this every time driving by this monument, and I know that everyone here will as well. So thank you.
Thank you, and we welcome you to the West Islip community. It's good to have you. We have two guest speakers. We have Captain John Cochrane, U.S. Navy retired, and Colonel James C. Brennan, U.S. Marine Corps retired. Captain John.
Okay, Charlie. Morning, everyone. Guests, students. John Cochrane, Bayshore grad in 1978. That's when I did early entry into the Navy. Back then, I was the first generation of the all-volunteer force, because before that, our Vietnam vets, if they didn't enlist, they were drafted. And that was, for me, a lot of the men and women that trained me in my going to be a surface warfare officer were Vietnam vets. So I got all the stories from the 18, because it really started at 18 years old. The guys and girls, or the guys would be here. You get your draft notice when you hit 18, and you wanted that lucky number to be, what was it, very high, not low. But that's the generation that was before me, and they served this country so well in a hard time. Vietnam was not an easy war. It challenged you, just not by mental and in a wartime situation, but it's a very challenging environment. And when you start talking to the vets, even my school, when I went to Jacksonville University for ROTC, we had the Ho Chi Minh Trail. And down in Florida, we did our training in the like environment that these men and women were training to go over to Vietnam. Even though it was after the war, we had all our setups in our college set up like the men remembered it and women at Vietnam. Because I had actually several officers that were women that were training me in my ROTC unit. So for me, as a naval officer, when I was on the battleship New Jersey, that ship served, was built in World War II, but it went all the way through Vietnam. And so I heard all the stories for the Vietnam vets that served on board the Jersey. And when I was on there in the early 80s, we would do a Westpac, which is a deployment in the Western Pacific, and we would go close to Vietnam just to let the Vietnamese know they might have won the war, but we still have a Navy outside their beaches. And it was for us, it was, and the Vietnam vets, it was very meaningful for them to sit there and say that we're still in that, operating in that environment. So thank a vet, thank these guys who served in that challenging war. And again, it is an honor for me to serve this great nation, because I've met some great people through my career, and I've been very challenged in a lot of areas I've been in for 30 years in the Navy. But the bottom line is we're vets, and you meet men like this who served in a challenging time, you tip my hat. So guys, thank you.
Thank you, Captain John. And now I'd like to invite up Colonel James C. Brennan, U.S. Marine Corps retired.
Morning, ladies and gentlemen. First and foremost, I want to thank our veterans for their service, and I want to recognize the 7 young West Islip men that gave their last full measure of devotion to their comrades so that we can enjoy our freedom. I'd kind of like to address this a little from the academic standpoint. The Vietnam War was an extremely complex environment. Mr. Cochrane hit on a little bit of it. Diplomatically, informationally, militarily, and economically, it was the most challenging environment. World War II was nothing compared to how complex Vietnam was. The issues that soldiers and Marines, airmen, sailors had to face on the ground at 19, and the decisions that they had to make, people not much older than you are now, dramatically affected the outcome of the war and where we are today and how we think about it. So in your studies, pay attention to all those aspects of the war, not just the military campaigns. Yes, they're significant, but the economic issues that went along with it, the political issues that went along with it, the diplomatic, how information was used. All of those things that came out of the Vietnam War are used today, and you see them every day, especially on today's environment with social media. So pay attention to what you're learning, learn from it, learn from those that went before and gave their last full measure of devotion for you and your freedom and your families. I wish you all the best of luck. God bless and Godspeed. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Colonel Jim. Right now, we're going to invite up a very special person. I think he's known as Lieutenant. Is that true still? All right. Mr. Kevin Murphy.
Good morning. I created my Vietnam experience class almost 30 years ago now because I felt it offered powerful lessons for young people to learn from our past experiences. It has only become more relevant over time as we deal with new challenges and new enemies to our nation and can use those lessons learned to inform us about how to go about our future course of action. The class is also an opportunity to specifically spotlight the experiences that the servicemen involved in the Vietnam War went through and to promote awareness of the issues they faced when they returned home. And for the people not in the know, the students that you see in front of you are all currently enrolled in the Vietnam class right now. The time of the Vietnam War, as some of these other people just pointed out, was a very divisive one for our country, shrouded in controversy and cast a long shadow over the ensuing decades. The impact of the war can be felt on our government, society, but most importantly, upon the men that served and participated in it. And the most tangible, the most obvious example we have as a measurement of the impact of that war is the Vietnam Veterans Memorial Wall located down in Washington, D.C. It displays the names of over 58,000 men that lost their lives in the Vietnam War. Here at the local level, Mr. Charlie Spencer, himself a veteran of the Vietnam War, donated the memorial you see in front of you right here to honor the 8 West Islip High School graduates that lost their life in that war. They attended the school right behind you, sat in the same classrooms you currently do, and walked the same hallways when their lives were cut short, interrupted from their aspirations for their future to serve something bigger than themselves. Over the years, I've often brought my students out to this memorial and tell them that this memorial is really just the tip of the iceberg if you're trying to assess the impact the war had on our society, and in the case of this memorial, on our community. This memorial can be very misleading. 8 names does not seem like many. But young people in front of me right now, reflect on this. There's a lot that you don't see. Next to every one of those names are parents that lost a son, brothers and sisters that lost a sibling, neighbors, teammates on teams, young people that they grew up with. All of their lives negatively impacted by the loss of these names that you see in front of you. There's also a lot more that you don't see on this wall. They paid the highest price, but there are over 300,000 Vietnam veterans that were injured, and in many cases, horrifically injured in the Vietnam War. They're not on the wall in Washington, D.C., and they're not on this memorial here, but they are still amongst us here in this community and all across the nation. Never mind the fact that Tens of thousands had debilitating diseases because of exposure to a horrible chemical used in that war called Agent Orange, many of which subsequently lost their lives because of it. And then there's the countless thousands, tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands that suffered psychological trauma as a result of their service in the Vietnam War, post-traumatic stress disorder. So please understand there's more to it than meets the eye. So therefore, I would say this memorial is a small reminder of the toll that that war took on our nation. And it's appropriate we have it as a place of remembrance, reflection, and respect. But I would argue that the wall in Washington, D.C., and memorials like the one in front of us right now should serve as a visible expression of serving something bigger than yourselves, a monument that does not physically exist, the idea of liberty. They are just examples of citizens that answered a call that has been heard for generations, stretching back over 200 years of our history, to preserve and to defend an idea. We have a long and proud history in our country of producing people that cherish it enough that they are willing to sacrifice their lives to ensure that that idea survives. We can't take it for granted. It barely existed in the world when we began as an experiment almost 250 years ago, and it is still under threat from groups and countries around the world today. Look no further than your morning newspaper or your evening news to verify that. So, at first glance, these are just 8 names to you, anonymous names that lived in West Islip over half a century ago. But I think, actually, you do know them, and you know them well. We all do. If you know freedom, the right to express your views, to disagree, to have a choice, to practice your religion, then I think you know the people on this wall. If you believe in the idea of America and our way of life, then I think you know the people on the wall in our humble memorial. If you contribute toward your community in any way or country, whether it be as a teacher, a police officer, a fireman, a medical professional, an elected official, or a member of the military itself, or you just love and respect the fact that you can call America home, then I think you do know the names on this memorial. We are all a part of this memorial. So it's okay at an event like this to be somber, but I think of it also as an invitation to explore, understand, and learn about that national experience known as the Vietnam War and our history in general. Look at it as a beginning, not an end. It is a place to be inspired and maybe to some degree, quiet celebration. And lastly, I'd like to say that I think it is especially important that young people, as a part of their education, be reminded that freedom is not free and that it should never be taken for granted. I have been using our Vietnam class as a vehicle to convey this message, and I hope that ultimately my students come away with a sense of pride in our country and a gratitude for all those that came before them and served this country. Thank you.
Thank you. I got something for you. You know, Mr. Lieutenant Murphy is a very important person. He represents 9 million people who served during the Vietnam era. There's 2 types of Vietnam veterans. I'm a Vietnam era veteran. I didn't serve in country. The Green Jackets, they're combat veterans. They served in country. 9 million people from 1955 to 1975 were involved with Vietnam. And that's who Lieutenant Murphy is talking about, those 9 million people. And because of him, he keeps the story alive, because otherwise Vietnam is a paragraph in a textbook. So we want to thank you, and we want to present this. Where are you? Where are you? I can't find. There you are. I said I have something for you, and these are the records from the VA, Veterans Administration, of those 8 fellows. How they died, what happened, how old they were they married, not married, and
Appreciate that. Thank you.
I know you do, and I appreciate what you do more than you can think. I'd ask the board of the chamber to step forward. Ann, Adele, Diane, Brad. And Diane is going to read the names of the men on the stone, and the chamber members, our executive board, will be right behind her.
David Frederick Bukowski. Vaughn David Connell. James Ralph Cooper. William Brian Monahan. Daniel Russell Nids. Thomas Frank Post. And Leonard Selenikio.
Thank you, Diane. Let's just have a moment of silence for these men. There's another fellow who's on the wall that went to Vietnam, served, and lost his life. He was a classmate here in 1963, 64, and he's not on the monument because he moved when he enlisted. And his name has been added at the bottom, and his name is Arthur E. McLeod. So he's remembered and in our hearts. Right now, we're going to lay the wreath, and I'd ask the Vietnam Vets of America, Chapter 11, to bring the wreath forward and place it in front, right behind the monument here. And Braden Pritchett is going to play taps. This concludes the service, and I just want to let everybody know that in October 2nd, we're having a replica of the Vietnam Wall come to Tanner Park in Copeg. It's 325 feet long, and it has 58,000 plus names engraved in the wall, and there's also a museum that comes with it. So it'll be a spectacular presentation, and this wall is the property of the Vietnam Memorial in Washington, D.C. That's the wall. So it's called The Wall That Heals, and you're the first people that are hearing about it, and we're making a presentation at Town Hall in Babylon later on this afternoon. So, Mr. Murphy, again, thank you very much. For our school administrators and teachers, thank you for what you do every day. For our service people, Captain Cochrane, Colonel Brennan, thank you for taking the time to come and pay tribute here. And to everybody that came, thank you. And for the students, we're depending on you, because we're getting a little older, to spread the word about Vietnam, because you know it, and he taught you. And I gave him some more information today that he can share with you. So thank you very much.